so that we can refer back to it and share it with others as well. So I just wanted to welcome everyone today for taking the time to join Kelly and myself to talk about sustainable travel options and how we can include those into our next vacations. So there's a couple more here. Let me just try and multitask, which I'm not great at. So Kelly is the Director of Global Programs at Planeterra Foundation, which is a nonprofit that is part of the G Adventures family, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was founded by G Adventures founder Bruce Pontiff in 2003, and so we operate as a separate nonprofit organization, but get a lot of funding from G, and the travelers are big supporters, and as well as partners like agents and traveler staff and so on. So
yeah, so it was pretty cool to see that Planeterra is operating in 7 continents and 51 countries. And you coordinate all the programming for all of Planeterra, right? I hope you have some stuff, because otherwise you're going to be really busy.
Yeah, definitely. 3 full-time program managers that split up the globe, and then 6 regional field people as well that are community development specialists that work in the countries, the regions that they are from.
Like implementing the programs and everything.
Yeah, and keeping relationships up with all of our partners over the years, helping them strengthen their businesses and so on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. All right, so at the moment, some people are muted, some are not muted. So I'm fine with it this way. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop those in the chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end, and and feel free to chat amongst yourselves. We will try to make this interactive as we go. So I'm gonna stop that one. So the reason why I particularly wanted to do sustainable travel, at our conference in October, we talked about sustainable travel, and it was pretty cool to see all the different programs that different operators have as part of their operations. But Planeterra, I think, was almost one of the first ones, right, moving forward to do this. And we're talking about sustainable travel. And when I started being a travel agent, or thinking about it years ago, I was like, sustainable travel, it's all about environmental stuff, but it's not really. There's so much more to it. Do you want to expand on that for me, Kelly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you think about it in general and simplest terms, it can be maximizing the positive benefits for the people and the place that you're visiting. So, thinking about the natural environments, including wildlife, as well as maximizing the positive impacts on the local economy and the people who live there being their home. And so whether that's from respect or supporting local businesses, that's all part of what can make tourism more sustainable. The word sustainability meaning something that endures, and in French it's translates directly to durable, right? Something that we want to be able to last. And or if you look at it from an indigenous earth wisdom perspective, the 7 generations beyond us from now will continue to benefit and live in a healthy and beautiful environment. So in order for people to appreciate and to conserve their natural environment, they have to also be benefiting from that tourism industry in order to feel that it's something that is worthwhile having in their backyard.
Yeah. My first real introduction to it was in South Africa, actually, in Cape Town. And my dad and I were visiting. We were on the hop on, hop off bus, and there was this stop to go to this like tea bag art place, right? So we stopped, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool, right? They're supporting 20 local ladies there who all get creative, and they create these amazing designs. I could have bought like the whole shop there after watching them design. I came back with a tray which has like the little tea bags on it, that they're designs, which I find so beautiful. And then it was just like a random find. And then I heard about Planeterra, and I was like, there's so many more projects going that we can utilize. So and it doesn't have to be hard to incorporate this into our travels, right? Because I mean, simply for me, I just stopped at a local workshop, watched them do their work, and then purchased, and that helps their community. What other ways, like there's a few projects that you guys offer, how can we easily incorporate this into our travels?
Yeah, so a lot of, responsible travel tips early on were a lot about the things that individuals can do, and taking reusable bottles or leaving the place as you found it, right? So building from that, going back to the philosophy of being respectful to what is in other people's homes. A lot of the complaints and issues around over tourism were that people are disrespecting our home and we're not benefiting. So what's the point of having this tourism?
Right. Yeah.
So in order for the local people to benefit, seeking out artisans just like you described, and how much more interesting it is when you speak to the artist or the person that made the craft, whether it's jewelry or something to take home. For me, it's one of the best parts of traveling. And then of course there's food, experiencing a meal in a traditional way, or learning something new about the local cuisine. That's
taking a cooking class from the locals, right?
Yeah. And then if even further step from that, if it's an organization that's depending where you're traveling and what some issues may be, it's good to research beforehand and see, well, how can I have the biggest impact? Are women in this destination, in this country, suffering from lack of economic empowerment and opportunities? Are there women's organizations that are offering an amazing meal experience or a handicraft cooperative that I could visit and take home really great memories, as well as really great crafts for my family, for example? Or maybe the problem is with youth, a high population of youth living on the street, and you find an organization that works with youth and trains them in hospitality. There's an example in Vietnam where the youth are doing the market tour and then a cooking lesson, and it's lots of fun, and you're having a delicious meal while learning how to make delicious noodles and things like that. And then, of course, Indigenous owned businesses, there's a lot of really fantastic tourism experiences all around the world with Indigenous communities, whether it's in a remote community or in an urban center. But it could be art, it could be food, it could be learning about traditional use of flora and fauna, all sorts of fantastic experiences that are leaving in the local, leaving money in the local hands.
Yeah, and now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking back to my trip in Vietnam, and I went to a restaurant where they have hired the youth. They are training them to have that skill set, and while they don't want them there forever because they want to bring the next lot in, they're giving them a skill set that they can move into another job and be more self-sustaining. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And the other one that comes to my mind I've read about recently is Women in Wheels, the one in India. And that program for me just shows how much this can empower a
Mm-hmm.
local woman to support her family and get out of situations where she is not being treated as she should be, really.
Yeah, and that's something that we may think of as sustainable transport. Could be, an electric vehicle and things like that, and that's possible too. And some are being combined. There's an organization in Nepal that's doing the women drivers, and they're driving electric vehicles, so they're going all out, which is really neat. But yeah, even the transport you take could be more sustainable in certain ways. And there's a lot of environmental organizations that use tourism as well to fund their programs, whether it's for getting travelers directly involved in conservation initiatives, like tree planting or things like that, or simply using tourism visits to the destination for conservation. We have one program in Australia, actually, that is the snorkeling tours contribute to coral reef restoration. So there's a lot of creative organizations out there providing really great experiences, fun experiences that you're going to seek out anyway, but you're contributing to the well-being of the people or the planet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it just makes you feel better about the dollars. You're just getting more for your dollar when you do that, right? So it's not just going towards a company, it's actually going to support the community. Yeah. So we've talked about a few of the projects that you are working with. Do you want to expand on a couple that are like super exciting and making a really big impact for you guys?
Yeah, and you wanted me to share my slides here, right? Or
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Get some visuals going here.
Yeah,
something so that everyone can watch and eat at the same time.
Yeah, sure. So I guess if everyone is able to select view and fit to window to make sure that you can see the full screen. This is a picture of one of the programs in Jordan, Beit Karat Souf, and it's a group of women that do a cooking class. And it was on the cover of our impact report last year. So
it looks amazing. And the big dishes that they're cooking with.
Yeah. And I just put 2 intro slides to Planeterra that reiterate the issue that we're trying to solve, and the fact that trillions of dollars are spent globally, and actually the majority doesn't benefit local people, especially when you're talking rural or marginalized communities. This is a homestay program in Nepal, where you do cooking with families and some traditional ceremonies, and they're just really lovely people. So what we do at Planeterra is actually help community and nonprofit organizations create these tourism experiences, new enterprises via funding for infrastructure like equipment and kitchen equipment. We do a lot of kitchens around the world, and training so that they can provide the experience to travelers. And then it's really kickstarting them so that they bring in sustainable income over the life of their business. And we work with women and youth and Indigenous and rural communities, as well as environmental organizations.
How young, like you've got a picture there with some really young kids, what would be, obviously you talk about families, but when you bring somebody into a kitchen to give them skills to contribute, what would the age be on that minimum age?
Oh, that when there's a youth project, they're usually teenagers. So yeah, they would be, do you mean as family tourists, or do you mean the youth beneficiaries?
The beneficiaries.
Yeah, they're usually just as youth. We would define youth here like teenagers, 15, 16 minimum and up, that are doing it as a curriculum and training program. We try to make sure that that it's not something that's replacing school, for example, but that's in addition to school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'll go through a few projects that provide a really good example and experience, but also just to let people know what is happening right now with the current crisis and how they're sort of adapting and just to make it a bit relevant for the current times. As I'm sure all of you, being in the business you're in, one of the things I meant to say at the beginning was that I hope you're doing as well as can be, and that better times are ahead for all of us. And this one, Aid Child Equation Cafe, it's a fantastic art gallery and restaurant at the equator in Uganda. And all of the there's staff that work at the cafe that are youth graduates of the Aid Child Leadership Institute, which is the building in the bottom right corner. This is a separate location to the cafe, but there over 60 children and youth that are HIV positive live and receive healthcare and training, and all of the profits from the restaurant go back to their leadership training programs for the youth. And when the crisis hit, we provided an emergency grant for them to be able to supplement the diet of the children who are immunocompromised. And this is the egg delivery of the purchase that was made for the food, because the bigger transport than motorbikes was prohibited. So they were getting all the deliveries to the Institute via motorbike. So
that requires some serious balancing skills.
The Dakar Sand Lodge in Botswana, it's in the Kalahari. It's a beautiful property with animals, and it's completely run by Indigenous San. People may have heard of the San people called Kalahari Bushmen in past times, and they are people with incredible wisdom of thousands of years of living off the land, and provide an amazing cultural experience, as well as all the staff at the lodge are San, and it's owned by the trust that puts all profits towards running the nearby community of 2,000 people, where traditionally or most recently people are living off about 30 cents per day. So the lodge is the main source of income for this village. They also have an art museum. The San art is quite famous around the world. And this picture here is of one of the rooms at the lodge before and after, with all of the purchases for the emergency grant we sent as well, because as the tourism income crashed this past month, they were just in need of some supplies to be able to feed the families that rely on that tourism income. And there's a beautiful campsite as well there. So all the different types of travelers, from the overland camping to the lodge guests, can stay here.
Great. Yeah.
This is one from southern India in Kerala, Together We Earn. So it's a women's nonprofit that was working on economic empowerment, skills training. They had developed a local catering program, and they had never thought about tourism being a source of income when we had found them. And we said, but you have all these beautiful cultural programs. They do music and crafts, as well as food, and they had a kitchen that just needed some upgrades, and we were able to develop a new experience with them for travelers. And they had their first few groups in February, March of this year. So they're on pause right now, but they're very inspiring ladies, full of optimism and positivity. They created this Together We Earn out of the acronym of their actual Tiruvaram NGO. It's the 3 letters TWE. So just a lovely group of ladies, and they just needed a few $100s for a few months to support needs of the families.
With those smiles, how could you not think that they're the most positive people around?
Yeah, and they do a
Exude
lovely
hospitality.
experience. All the food is on banana leaves. It's all very traditional, but and eco-friendly, and just, yeah, real lovely experience. And finally, Barracas de la Trece, it's in Medellin in Colombia, which is Comuna Trece, which people might have heard of. It's become a popular place to visit in Colombia. And this lovely women's nonprofit has a delicious meal experience. All profits there also go back to supporting 131 families that are most vulnerable in communities like this in Medellin and a few other areas of Latin America where you have really, really, really high up in the hills sprawl, and people have to, the poorest people live way up high. And during this pandemic, for example, no one was allowed to leave, but they don't have farms to grow food. So there's actually no way of getting any kind of food at all.
Right.
So we also sent a grant to them to be able to support the 130 families. But normally, yeah, it's a bustling new, we developed helped them with equipment to upgrade the restaurant so they could have group visits as well as independent travelers. And another great group of welcoming ladies supporting them.
So if you are an independent traveler, how would you, is there, obviously we can go to your website and see all the projects that Planeterra offers. Is there, what's the best way for someone to make sure that they incorporate a lot of these available projects into their itinerary if they are not part of a G Adventures tour, for example?
Right. Yeah, a lot of them are selling, they either have their own website or Facebook page, or they're selling now on some of the OTAs or through social media directly. And one of the things that we're actually providing as a form of support right now for them to be able to diversify their income and attract more customers independently as well, is to help them with setting up that online marketing presence if they don't already have it. But in the meantime, people can contact Planeterra, and we can either direct them to a reservations email if that exists, or we can contact them directly and help them set up a visit.
Perfect. Yeah, because there's always like so many great projects around, but sometimes actually finding them is half the battle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And perfect. All right. So I wanted to see if did you have other things that you wanted to share there? Or?
No,
Sorry.
that was it.
I wanted to see if anyone had any questions that they wanted to ask. I mean, Kelly's here. She's got probably all of the answers. And so now would be the time to do that. You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat box, and we can do that. But yeah, I for one want to, for my clients' travels, especially going forward, is incorporate more of these projects into itineraries. And are there, like, you're not the only company around, obviously. A lot of the tour operators have their own kind of option programs as well, which is what we found out about, which was really nice at our ensemble conference last year. All the companies, instead of talking about which tour they're doing this year or which cruise they've got or what the newest promotion was, it was more about projects such as yours and how they're giving back, which was a really fresh perspective I found. So yeah. So okay, well, no one's unmuted themselves there, so I'll assume there's like no specific questions. Oh, one question regarding future projects. One of the reasons Paula travels with G is the ripple score and accountability to stop leakage. So I'm guessing that you have a considerable impact into G-Adventure's Ripple score and.
Yeah, so they're actually done separately. Planeterra used to, and I did do a lot of the G-Adventures sustainability projects in the past, but it's totally separate now. So there is a responsible travel VP, and there was a person working specifically on that, and I was just helping to advise and think about how Planeterra could work on this, but we were looking at climate response. Certainly, I don't know when that will come back on the agenda because of the current crisis, but that was certainly the next thing, Paula. It was climate and biodiversity response, and we were looking at in Planeterra how we can do. We have a bunch of projects now that are related to that, whether it's community-based climate change resiliency or even climate or carbon mitigation type projects. But then separately, G-Adventures was going to look more closely at carbon footprint and that sort of thing. So that was the big next thing to happen that was coming.
Right.
And in terms of Planeterra, we were on track to complete Project 100, which was to get our 100th community tourism project in place. Also on hold at the moment in that we're not developing new projects, but helping support our current ones. So there's over 80 of them around the world that need some support.
Of course, yeah. Because we just don't know really when they're going to get that tourism back, and it's all going to be at different stages too, right? Around the world. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
cool. Perfect. All right. So I was just going to, I think we'll wrap it up there. We want to keep this short and sweet. And I thank you, Kelly, for making the time to join us and to educate us on what projects there are around. I will send out an email to everyone that's on the call at the moment and direct them to your website and highlight a few different projects that are there. If anyone needs to contact me, my details are on the screen there, and obviously Planeterra's website as well. And I just wanted to share that the next Lunch and Learn will be June 16th, and it will be about cultural travel, and we'll focus more on the French Polynesian culture, how that changes our perspective as well when we change. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and making the time and having their lunch with us. And we'll look forward to connecting in the near future. All right.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.